Hello, beautiful humans. This is MJ with Mirrored Wellness Podcast. Thank you for joining me on this quest for self-mastery. In this podcast, I talk, sometimes ramble on, about all things self-wellness. I share tips and personal journeys that have touched my life. I hope you enjoy, lean in, and let's get to today's episode. Hello, my friends. This is MJ, your host for Mirrored Wellness Podcast. Welcome. Glad you could join us today. Or actually, it's just me. Sorry to disappoint. Just me. Just little me. So I figured I would take a little time to explain what the hell I'm working on. I work on a lot of times. Little bits and pieces of goals and such. And I like to share it. So recently I've been a little overwhelmed with the amount of stuff going on. Life is starting to shake and groove, if you will, and there's a lot of tasks to be done. I get overwhelmed when I don't have severe clarity and direction. So this is a thing that happens, I think, with a lot of entrepreneurs and solopreneurs, and I've kind of seen it with some of my friends as well. We get like decision fatigue a little bit because we're constantly having to make decisions on, like, we're new at entrepreneurship and solopreneurship, and it's a lot. And you get thrown all this stuff and you want to learn it, and it gets to be quite the list of things to get done. So as far as I'm concerned right now, I'm trying to get some clarity around some organization. I historically have not been very well, haven't done super awesome at time management. So it's definitely always the thing I work on. Time blocking has been my friend, and consistency has not. So we're going to leave that there. Anyway, if you have a lot of anxiety like I do, that comes from you kind of like knowing where you want to be, knowing what your goals are and what you'd like your future self to look like, and, you know, showing up as that person, but not quite knowing how to get there. So there's this like middle ground that happens that, you know, you have to organize for. If you're anxious and tend to have a lot of ideas and tasks, I keep them in my head, and that's not a great place for them. We'll get to that in a little bit. So if this sounds like you, let's talk. Let's do this. I have got some tips that has helped me in the last few weeks that I've tried a few things, and just stuff from the past. So let's go. I would say number one is to know what your priorities are. I have a sticky note, and actually I'll take it off right now. I have a sticky note that's on my computer, and it tells me my priorities. This may seem like a really dumb thing to do. Like, what? I know where my priorities are. Every once in a while, I need a sticky note reminder. And you know how I am about my sticky notes. This is a really good guide when there's something going on and you can't choose between one or the other. If you are consistent and really, I hate this word, but for lack of a better word, anal about your priorities, then that's going to be a really good guide to making a decision of what should come next. Now, my main priority, my first and foremost priority is my daughter. Always. If it was anyone in the world and they all needed help and my daughter was in line and they all needed help, like, completely in the same manner, no one was dying or anything, she would always come first because she's my main priority. And then the list goes on from there. So if we're talking priorities, when you know what your priorities, and it's okay to be honest, right? So this is sometimes hard for us to realize. Like, I'll tell you a little story. When I was still working a 9-to-5 job, and it was a new job, and I was also going to school still. I was finishing up my degree, and I was a mom, and all this stuff. I had a really huge tendency to put my work and my homework before my family. And if I really dug deep and realized that is my main priority, I'm being honest, but why is it my main priority? If you feel like you've hit a wall and you say, well, based on how I act, my main priority is work, but I want it to be my family, it might be a good idea to ask yourself why you feel like that. And again, feelings are for feelings. So if something comes up, just let it be. And it's okay. That was a hard sit down with myself when I had to really like feel that feeling about, oh my gosh, like I'm actually prioritizing my work and stuff first because I was miserable in my home life and I didn't know what to do about a lot of my parenting at the time. So, with all that being said, then I, shifted my priorities and said, okay, well, my daughter really is the most important thing in my life. So I really need to like shift my priorities to be. And what I was doing was just hiding in my work, right? Because I was uncomfortable with my main priority and I didn't know what to do. So there's number one. Know what your priorities. And once you've established those priorities, it's a really good idea to put them somewhere and just remind yourself every once in a while. We all need reminders, even for the stupidest stuff. Man, I've told you a million times, I have sticky notes everywhere. So, it's okay. And that way, if it's up somewhere, someone else knows as well, right? It's nice to know. Second thing is, when I think I need to organize my time, I also need to know what works best for me. When before I was diagnosed with Hashimoto's, which is a thyroid thing, and before I started taking the correct meds, I was a terrible morning person. I hated waking up. When I finally got the right dosage of everything that was happening in my life, I finally realized that actually my best times for work are in the morning. I'm the most productive, most creatively thoughtful, open-minded in the morning. And it fades somewhere around 2:30, 3 o'clock, maybe 4, depends on how well I've been eating, how much I've been moving, all that kind of stuff. This has taken me years to figure that out, only because I wasn't paying attention. Then I started to realize that in order to be productive, I really had to know when I was the most productive in my own life. And this changes for everyone, because if we're being honest, I have a best friend and my boyfriend are both evening workers. I am pretty much worthless after 5 or 6 o'clock if I haven't had a break. So, and I'll digress if I go into breaks. But what I'm saying is, a good way to figure this out is to take a couple weeks or a week or 3 days, whatever you're comfortable with. But I definitely do it more than just one day. So 3 minimum, 2 weeks if you really want to get anal about it. Sorry, I keep bringing up that word for anybody who hates that word. Log and I'm not saying you have to write it down. Some people have a really hard time writing things down, logging things. I know I'm not a huge fan of time tracking, and that's something that needs to be done, unfortunately. But so if you're that person, just make a mental note, if not like a note in your phone. Hey, at 11 o'clock on this day, I felt energized, productive. And then at 2 o'clock, I felt blah. Right? So if you're keeping track of how you feel every couple of hours or so, you'll get a good gist if you want to go back and be like, okay, well, every time at like 4 o'clock, I'm feeling like I need a nap. So then you know not to really schedule your really hardcore things at 4 o'clock. And honestly, if you really think about it, most of the time you'll know what your times are. Like if you're really just thinking back, you probably don't need to do the logging and all that other stuff, but it's not a bad activity either, just to check in with yourself as well. So highly recommend that. I used to do that. Therapist of mine actually suggested I do that for a couple of weeks for him, because he was like, let's see how much your mood fluctuates. And actually, that was a really enlightening experience. But anyway, third, find a calendar system that you like and that works. So actually on my phone, and it took me a really long time to find something that I liked. I'm one of these people who will buy something because it it pleases my mind to look at it. It's aesthetic, right? This Apple has a calendar called MoleSkin, and it's very simple and it's elegant, and you can change the colors, and it's gorgeous. Because I like it, I'm more apt to look at it. And that's why I say that's kind of like a little hack for me, is that if it's pretty, I'll look at it. If it's bleh, then I don't really care to. And I know that might be counterproductive a little bit sometimes, but that's what I chose this calendar. Not only did this calendar work for because it's aesthetically pleasing, but it also links all of my calendars. Now, I know Google has something where you can input all your calendars, but I have some calendars that don't jive. I had a couple calendars. I don't have them anymore, but that didn't quite jive with Google. So I found one that I could just plug everything in and have all of my calendars all in one spot. And it's worked out super well. I keep my personal and, both businesses in the calendar. Everything's in there, and it's all color coded. So I know podcast is this color, bookkeeping is this color, contractor works that color, so I have it all colored out. It's beautiful to look at. And I will look at that every night before I go to bed, and every morning when I wake up, I'll look and see. And it also sends me a review for the day. I set it to, 7:30 or something like that. It comes up and it says, hey, here's your day today. Kind of like an itinerary. It's quite nice. So find a calendar system that works. And like I said, for me, my calendar is literally like my blood. Like, I live off of it. The next step to calendar is that you already have a calendar. If you time block, you're like 5 levels ahead of, time blocking. When I worked a 9 to 5 is another thing that we ended up doing, time blocking a lot. And it was just, if you're not used to it, and some people absolutely hate time blocking. I'm one of those people, but man, I hate to admit it works, but it works. Yeah. I felt like it was too routine. And these are things that I'm starting to learn about myself, that it was a limiting belief of mine. Just because you're time blocking doesn't mean you're not free. It just means that at this time, on these days, you're working on this thing. You can change it, but if you start to get into a routine, and this is what time blocking did for me, you start to get into a routine where every morning between 10 and 3, or that's a little bit much, but maybe every morning between 10 and 12, I'm always working on my bookkeeping projects. Then your body will start to get used to that, right? Your brain will go, okay, well, it's 10, it's time to work. So time blocking works. And honestly, for that, I use the Pomodoro method when I'm time blocking anything over like 30 minutes. So I'll work for 25, get up, move, work for 25, get up, move. Now, this is a little bit of a hashtag giving advice without doing it kind of thing. I do the best that I can to try to fit this in. But ultimately, I get distracted and end up pomodoring myself way out of line. I'll take the break and then I'll totally forget I have to go back to work. So that's no good. So here's another thing too. Have your phone be outside of the room. Do not work with your phone on top of you. I say this as I'm literally staring at my phone. I should not have it in here with me, but when I'm working on stuff like the bookkeeping work where I super have to concentrate and it's not creative work, it's more analytical work, I will take my phone and put it somewhere else because I know my mind is going to want to wander. So that's the times that I know that I have to take it out. So all that, I know that was number 3, but there was probably like 6 in there. Now, the 4th one, this is where it gets really interesting. The 4th tip is find a task system that works for you. This is going to take some time and it's going to take some work. I've started reading a book called Get Things Done by David Allen. I am currently in the middle of working through the system. So I'm only like 2 weeks into the system, but so far it's such a relief. It's nice to get it out of your head and onto paper and then have a system where your brain trusts that you're going to pick up those memories those ideas, right? So, again, the system's called Get Things Done, and it's by David Allen. He wrote a book about productivity. And in the book, he says this: your mind is for having ideas, not for holding them. And when I started, I don't know if you've ever had this, where you've had a day where you feel really overwhelmed. And I do this thing where I take a sticky note before I even get out of bed. I take a sticky note and I write down like exactly what I need to do, right? So I'll wake up, I'll feel overwhelmed, I'll grab a sticky note and I go, okay, I need to, number 1, meditate. Number 2, I need to journal. Then I need to get out of bed and I'll write this down. Then I need to make my bed and then I need to go to the bathroom, every little detail. And once it's out of my head and I feel like I could just keep coming back to that sticky note, there's a relief that happens. This system is kind of like that, where everything that comes to your brain, you put in an inbox. So say I have an idea for a podcast, for one of my podcasts. I will go into my inbox. It's just one sticky note that I have in my Google Keep or whatever program that you want to use. Notes on your iPhone or notes on your Android or whatever you have. And I'll literally just say inbox. It'll say inbox and I click on the note and I add a line and it'll say, had an idea for podcasts, call so-and-so for interview. And that's it. I just want to get what's in my mind on the page with as much detail as I can get, that it will remind me of what I was actually thinking. So if I just wrote down podcast idea, tomorrow or the next day when I go through my list and put all those ideas in other notes in other places or in my calendar, I'm not going to remember what the hell I was talking about. That's why you kind of want to put a little bit of detail. Like, you don't have to write out a whole paragraph, but, podcast, call Tony for interview, blah, 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 blah. And then there you go. So that's kind of the system. And then once you have it in inbox, I believe he says once a day, but it depends on how much you have in your note that you collected during the day. And then you divvy that out into different like project lists or projects, right? It is a fabulous system. It has really helped me tremendously keep my thoughts in a place. And then, then you have a weekly review and then you have a monthly review past that. But I know my time is starting to get a little bit down here. So what I really wanted to do is give you some of those tips and then tell you what I'm then working on with to get things done. And maybe this will help. And maybe some people have said that they haven't liked the system itself, but I feel like even if the system itself doesn't necessarily work for you, there might be something in the book or in that framework that you can take back from. You can Google it and YouTube video summaries of it. And there's really awesome like flowchart out there. It's definitely go check it out. If you don't want to read the whole book, the summaries on YouTube are fabulous. There are a couple really good ones on there. So, so that is what I have for you today. I know a lot of times, most of the time actually, my anxiety comes from just a lack of clarity and a lack of organization or direction. And this is something that I've been working on. And this system, the get it like out of my head and onto a page it's almost a no-brainer, because if you've hung around me long enough, you know that I'm also an advocate for journaling. So journal that shit right out. And it makes sense that I would just put all the tasks there too. Why am I holding on to them like a crazy person in my head? So that's that. I'm also working on, finally picked up The Artist's Way by Julia Cameron, and I'm starting to work on that, which I'm super duper excited about. So, keep an ear out for that. We might have a couple podcasts directed towards that in the creative space. But anyway, I will let you go. You have a wonderful day, evening, morning, whatever you got going on. I love you. You continue being a beautiful human, and we will see you next time. as always, thank you for listening. If you like, love, hate, get value, don't get value, this podcast, leave some feedback, like and subscribe, tell your friends. Don't forget to check me out on all social media. All that is in all the podcast notes below. This is MJ signing off. You continue to be a beautiful human. I love you.